The wind howled a mournful dirge through the skeletal branches of the wood, each gust sounding less like wind and more like a choked sob echoing the heartache of forgotten souls. Stella, cloaked in thick furs to ward off the biting cold, pulled her hood around her face, her breath misting in the frigid air. She was utterly lost, adrift in a labyrinth of shadow and nostalgia. Days ago she had strayed from the king's road, seduced by the promise of a shortcut, only to discover that the route was a fool's errand, an enticing trap set by the woods themselves. Night had fallen, painting the sky in hues of deep indigo and bruised plum as the sun sank below the horizon. As darkness enveloped her, the wood lived fully up to its name. A hushed sense of dread clung to the air, thick and suffocating. It wasn't just the howling wind that whispered conspiratorially. It was a deeper, malignant presence that seemed to resonate from the heart of the trees. The sound of faint rustles, where no wildlife should tread, sorrowful sighs that brushed against her ear even amidst the savage gusts. And once, a low, chilling chuckle that reverberated through her bones like a death knell. She clutched the hilt of her dagger, the cold steel offering a meager comfort against the encroaching terror. Frayed by hunger and fatigue, Stella told herself it was merely her imagination, but the veil of darkness felt far too alive. Then she saw it, a flicker of golden light in the distance, like a hesitant firefly igniting a drowning heart. Hope, a fragile butterfly, began to beat within her chest. She stumbled toward it, branches clawing at her cloak, thorns snagging at the thick furs that had become her armor against the chilling winds. As she ventured further, the fleeting glow resolved into the warm shine of a solitary window illuminated against the night. The light emanated from a village, or what remained of one. The houses sagged like broken-backed beasts, their wooden frames warped, and no smoke curled from their chimneys, no laughter or chatter broke the oppressive silence, save for the relentless whisper of the wind and beneath it, a deeper, unnerving stillness. Hesitantly, she approached the nearest house, the one with the beckoning light still flickering behind a grimy pane. The door hung slightly ajar, groaning softly in the wind like an invitation steeped in foreboding. With a heart racing in syncopated fear and curiosity, she pushed it open, its weary hinges screaming in protest. The interior was dimly lit by a single oil lamp, casting long, dancing shadows across the room as if desperate to escape the stillness. Dust lay thick as a shroud over everything, the remnants of a life stilled. There was a table set for a meal long gone cold, the dishes caked with layers of grime. Half-eaten food, transformed into petrified husks, lay forlornly on platters, an eerie tableau suggesting the inhabitants had been interrupted in an ordinary evening only to vanish into the void. A wave of unease colder than the wind outside washed over Stella. "Hello, is anyone here?" she called out, her voice quivering in the oppressive silence. Only stillness answered, a heavy weight pressing against her senses. She moved further into the room, her boots crunching on the dust-covered floorboards. The atmosphere thickened as she shifted, the shadows flickering to life around her. In a corner, a child's rocking horse stood frozen mid-rock, its painted eyes staring blankly ahead, a melancholy reminder of innocence lost. Next to it lay a tiny, worn doll with a porcelain face cracked and one button eye missing, a silent indictment of the grief that permeated the air. Suddenly the lamp flickered, the flame dancing wildly as if an invisible breath blew across it. Shadows leaped and stretched, twisting familiar shapes into monstrous forms. A prickling sensation crawled across Stella's skin, an acute feeling of being watched by unseen eyes, and her instincts kicked in. She spun around, dagger drawn. Nothing met her gaze, just the dusty remains of the forsaken room. She reminded herself it was the wind seeping through cracks, playing tricks with the flame, but the frantic pounding of her heart told her otherwise. Deciding to seek another house, her courage wavered as she stepped outside. The village street loomed before her, the dim lamplight casting a ghostly pallor on the decaying edifices. Each house appeared identical in its bleak despair, like frames from a forgotten dream, dark and still, yet beckoning her closer to the village's heart. Her legs moved instinctively to the house directly across the street. Its door swung wide open, welcoming her into an even thicker darkness. The moment she stepped inside, an ice-cold chill enveloped her, sinking into her very bones. This house was different. The silence enveloped her like a heavy blanket, an oppressive presence that felt alive with sorrow. Then, like an ember igniting in dark air, she heard it, a faint weeping, so soft it was nearly a part of the silence itself. The sound seemed to seep from the very walls, weaving through her mind, conjuring a scene of heartbreak and loss. It came from the back of the house. Curiosity wrestled with fear as she approached, dagger clutched tightly in her hand. The weeping led her to a narrow hallway and finally to a closed door. The sobbing was clearer now, a heart-wrenching ache resonating in the stillness. She reached for the door handle and it felt icy cold, a chilling reminder of whatever awaited her on the other side. Stealing her breath, she pushed the door open. The room was small and bare. In the center, under the ethereal glow of moonlight streaming through a grimy window, stood a figure, ethereal, shimmering like heat haze on a blistering day but unmistakably human. She was clad in a faded dress, her dark hair spilling around her face, shrouding her features. The atmosphere thickened with an agonizing sense of sorrow. Stella froze, her breath catching in her throat. This was no trick of light, nor a figment of her disturbed imagination. Before her stood a ghost, a woman draped in a cloak of despair. Slowly, the weeping figure raised her head, revealing a gaunt and pallid face, her eyes hollow pits that reflected the weight of a million sorrows. Yet within those depths shimmered a mournful, terrible light, something close to hope. "Leave this place," the ghost whispered, her voice thin and fragile. Paralyzed by fear, Stella could only watch as the specter took a step toward her, gliding rather than walking, and the weeping intensified like the wailing wind outside. The air turned bone-chilling, saturated with the scent of damp earth and decay. "This village, it is cursed," the anguished spirit continued, her voice gaining an eerie resonance that vibrated through the air. "We are trapped forever." As she spoke, other whispers rose around Stella, faint at first but growing louder, melding into a chorus of voices echoing from the very walls, the floor, the air itself. They spoke in a language she couldn't grasp, but the tone dripped with anguish, despair, and a pervasive weariness. With a trembling hand, the weeping woman extended a skeletal finger towards Stella. As it brushed against her arm, a wave of icy coldness rushed through her, robbing her breath and numbing her limbs. Visions flashed before her eyes, scenes of terror of villagers collapsing in silent screams, their eyes wide with horror. Each glimpse tore at her heart, each moment a haunting reminder of lives that had been extinguished. "The wood, it hungers," the ghost hissed, her voice laden with an unearthly malice. "It feeds on sorrow, on fear." Suddenly, comprehension struck Stella like a battering ram. The whispers in the woods, the abandoned village, the eternal sorrow, it wasn't merely the ghost, it was something older, far more insidious. The forest itself was alive, feeding on the suffering of those trapped within its grasp. The village wasn't just empty, it had been consumed. Panic surged within her, overriding the fear that had gripped her since she first entered the woods. With a sudden burst of adrenaline, she ripped her arm from the ghost's icy grasp and stumbled backward. She didn't stop to think, didn't dare look back. She fled, bursting out of the house and into the chilling twilight, sprinting toward the expanse of the wood, away from the village, away from the weeping woman, from the hungry woods themselves. The whispers followed her, an insidious chorus of despair clawing at her mind. She felt them tugging at her clothes, brushing against her skin, beckoning her to return. But she ran, driven by sheer terror, propelled by the desperate need to escape the cursed fate waiting to ensnare her. Exhaustion overcome her, her lungs burned and legs ached until she collapsed at the base of a gnarled ancient tree, trembling and gasping for breath. Tears streamed down her face as she cradled her aching heart. The whispers remained a haunting echo, faint yet persistent, trailing her as if she were still bound to their sorrow. Although she had physically escaped the village, she understood that the horror of her experience would haunt her forever, an indelible ink blot on her soul. She had stumbled into a realm where the boundary between life and death blurred, where sorrow festered and feasted on its victims. Upon regaining her resolve, she drew the severity of the situation into focus. The wood was ever watchful, ever waiting for its next prey. Days turned into weeks as Stella navigated the periphery of the wood, her heart a constant prisoner of anxiety and guilt. Each passing night brought dreams of the weeping woman, of anguished spirits whose faces paraded in torment. Each morning she awoke with a sharp ache in her chest, memories clawing at her fragility. But the call of the wood was unwavering. Compulsion turned into obsession, a gnawing need to understand the plight of the lost. With renewed determination coursing through her, she returned one fateful night to the edge of the wood, bolstered not just by fear, but with compassion for the nameless souls lingering there. Armed with the dagger she had once believed to be a mere talisman against horror, Stella plunged deeper into the wood, the cold, thick air standing sentry against her skin. Each step felt heavy with foreboding, yet her heart thrummed with the rhythm of purpose. It was on the third night of her return that she found a path, sinuous and serpentine, leading to a clearing veiled in mist and crowned by an aged stone altar draped in thick black thorns. Shadows coiled around the stones, as if the very wood sought to prevent her from unveiling its secrets. But the whispers swelled with desperation, pleading for her to return to the village and thus transforming into an unholy cacophony of torment. Stella, her resolve hardening, moved nearer to the altar. She felt the weight of the past pressing down, the remnants of lost offerings scattered about, dilapidated toys, remnants of a once happy life, garlands of hair collected from the wind. She knelt beside the altar, placing her palms against its cold surface. "I mean no harm," she whispered into the void, her breath barely stirring the heavy silence. "I seek to understand." Suddenly the shadows surged, as if surging from the very depths of the wood. The stones shuddered beneath her hand, thrumming with a pulse reminiscent of a dying heart. In that critical moment, a figure emerged, pale and ethereal, the weeping woman materializing once more from the darkness, shimmering as though imprisoned in a haze of pain. "Bring her back," she whispered, her mournful voice draping the clearing in sorrow. "Bring her home. The wood hungers and it yearns for her sweetness once more." "Who must I find?" Stella shouted, her voice strong against the rising tide of despair. "What child? Tell me what I must do." The ghostly form gestured toward the altar, where shadows twisted into the semblance of a silhouette, a frail child lost among the thorns. "The child," the ghost urged, "the child who wandered too far, she calls to me." Understanding dawned, clear and bright as the moon's glow piercing the night. Stella remembered the cracked doll, the rocking horse, the sinister enchantment that had swallowed the village whole. But this time she had a chance. If she could uncover the truth of the child's plight, she might break the cycle of sorrow that perpetuated the forest's hunger. Stella turned toward the fearful embrace of the wood, uncertainty coiling in her gut but determination firming her resolve. This time she would search unyieldingly. She would embrace the shadows that enveloped her, determined to rescue whatever flickering remnants of innocence still lingered. With each step deeper into the woods, she called upon her strength to manifest change, stepping into the darkness where light seemed impossible. She was not merely a victim of fate. She was a harbinger of hope, prepared to alter the course of history written in whispers of the hollow woods. As she ventured further, her footsteps echoed like a heartbeat in the silence, the shadows swirling around her with an energy that crackled. And though fear threatened to reclaim her, Stella clung to the knowledge that compassion could act like a beacon in the encroaching dark. In that desperate attempt to pull a discarded spirit back from the brink, she stumbled into her fate, determined to dismantle the chains binding the lost child to their sorrowful existence. The wind howled, the woods whispered, yet the song of hope began to weave through the air, impelling her forward into the murky depths of the wood. As she moved on, she knew that she would either find freedom or risk becoming a whisper herself within the darkness, but either way she would not turn back.